Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. The Bajaj Dominar 400 has got a small bump in price and weight, and it's also got some very essential goodies that the touring community has been requesting for. Watch our review to know about the additions.
The additions for 2022 can be summed up with 8 key parts. But the most obvious is the two-piece knuckle guard designed to match a tall new visor or windscreen. Now, the tall visor may or may not be to everyone's taste. Bajaj says that at least 15% of the Dominar owners wanted a tall visor. That is exactly why they did it. They wanted it as a factory accessory, which is why it has been done this way. Now, it has been nicely contoured. You also see these little holes that help reduce that buffeting that we are talking about. If it looks too tall for you, or if you think that this function is of no use to you, you can always settle for the smaller windscreen that you had on the previous editions of the Dominar. As for the taller windscreen, well, I've ridden it on the highway now. I rode it with a sports helmet, of course, not with a touring helmet, not with the one that has a peak on top. But with a regular sports helmet, the buffeting is actually not that bad at all. Now, the Dominar, you know that with that kind of an engine, it does some seriously good speeds. The buffeting is not a worry anymore. You also get these deflectors on the handguards. Now, these handguards, purely from a function perspective, I don't think that they completely solve what a handguard is supposed to do. You need to have this little frame so that if the bike falls, it doesn't break the levers in any way, but there is no frame here. So the only function for these handguards here is to deflect wind away from your hands in case you're touring or riding in cold weather with the wrong set of gloves. Does that do that well? Yes, to an extent it does. You still get quite a bit of wind on your arms, so ventilation during the hotter months is not a problem. So especially all riders in India are not going to really have any problem of the wind not reaching their arms or their sleeves all that much. So that is completely taken care of, and then the cold weather problem has been taken care of as well. I also like how they've done the design with a two-piece arrangement. It not only saves weight, but it also looks good. There's a bit of harmony there. You have colored panels, and then you have these translucent panels which match the finish of the visor. Now, the only downside to this, of course, I'm nitpicking, is that with the kind of YB engine that this is, between 4,000 to 6,000 RPM, if you're cruising in that RPM range, be it on the highway or just a relaxed cruise in the city, around that RPM you do get quite a bit of vibrations. And on our particular test bike, the left-hand panel was already rattling quite a bit. Speaking of protection, they have beefed up the leg guard to also include a bracket that covers the radiator and coolant reservoir. And down low, a new metal bash plate replaces the older plastic unit, and since the measurements and mounting points are unchanged, you can also retrofit them on the older Dominars. So this USB port is the only bit of the 2022 Dominar that you cannot retrofit on the older BS4 or BS6 Dominar 400s or even the Dominar 250. Everything else is a bolt-on on the other Dominars, including this mobile phone holder. Now, what this essentially is a little pipe here which is almost the same diameter, if not the same as the handlebar, which means all your handlebar mounts, GoPro or action cam, phone mounts, all of that can actually fit here. Now, with the phones, larger phones especially, it is going to sort of overlap a little bit on the console. But if you look at it right here at the top, the only thing that it's going to hide actually is the fuel gauge and a bit of the tachometer. And of course, the real-time fuel economy. So not much of the vital info that you're going to lose out on. All the telltale lights will still be visible. If you use something like a RAM mount or maybe some taller mount, it could give you a slightly better view of the phone as well as the console. I think what Bajaj could have done is given this a slightly more upright positioning instead of that leaned forward positioning. But apart from that, there's no nitpicking that I have on any of these accessories. I think what they have done is very thoughtful and everything is factory fit. So it essentially suits the purpose quite well. Bajaj has not made any mechanical changes to the bike, meaning that the engine, the chassis and the suspension, along with all the components and the tuning, remain unchanged. Now, the fly in the ointment for the Dominar, and a fat fly at that, has always been the weight of the motorcycle. 185 kilos is not that bad, it's not unmanageable. Now, the positive way to look at this weight, of course, is that, it prepares you for the more heavy touring machines, because if you're going to be upgrading from here, in all likelihood, the other touring machines, the bigger touring machines, are going to be much heavier than this. This particular motorcycle, the 2022 edition with all these accessories, is about 6 kilos heavier, 193 now. The additional weight does show a minor drop in performance, but not something that you would notice often on a touring bike of this class. The acceleration is still brisk, overtakes come easily, and touring comfort is quite good too. On the topic of touring, at the rear is a new carrier bracket that is designed to accommodate most popular top boxes, while the optional saddle stays make mounting of saddlebags an easy affair. And since these components are manufactured by Bajaj themselves, you won't have to go altering or tooling any of these. So this little unit is not a backrest. It's supposed to help the pillion or prevent the pillion from sliding in case of acceleration, because a lot of people complained, a lot of customers complained that under acceleration the pillion tends to move back, so this is like a stopper for the pillion. I don't know how useful this is, I don't know how safe this is, not too convinced with this, but thankfully for your chai breaks, the helmet fits nicely, it doesn't move, it doesn't fall that easily. All you touring fellows will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so the big deal now is that all these parts that you see are ideally what make their way onto an accessories list. But for 2022, all these parts are standard, save for this saddle stay. Now they are calling it hyper gear, something like what KTM has with their power parts. So that is a hint that Bajaj is going to get into the accessories business for a lot of its bikes, and it will all be under this catalog. This is not included in the motorcycle. This costs about 650 rupees more, but the other parts, they all come for a premium of 5,000 rupees over the outgoing 2021 Dominar 400. And that brings me to the conclusion. What do I think about this motorcycle? So the Dominar 400, it was always a value for money offering, and now with this kit, as a standard fit, the value proposition has gone up by a bigger margin. So if you need a season pass for the touring season, this is the Dominar you want.
With that, it's a wrap on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.
Namaskar.